Welcome to this week's episode of Let's Talk Automotive and how things work. And in this segment, we're going to take you through some of the basics of tires that we find typically on either our buckies or our passenger cars. So first things first, let's understand clearly that a tire is a critical component for our car from a safety point of view. It is literally the only area that is in contact between the car and the road. And in fact, the contact area, the tread that's exposed to the tarmac, is normally about the size of the palm of our hand. And if we take 4 of these, that equals to about the same size as an A4 sheet of paper. That's all that's holding you between being safe and having an accident on the road. So let's go through the different types of tires that we typically find out there. The first is that we get high performance tires, and these are predominantly also summer tires. And the characteristics of these tires is that they have a low profile, which I'll explain a little bit later, but they also have a very square shoulder, and the tread bias is towards dry weather handling characteristics. So the shoulder being square prevents the tire from rolling when we go around a corner aggressively. And one of the things that we do find with these types of tires is that they track very easily in terms of the surface of the road. So if you've got a high performance car with a high performance tire, you do find that the tire tends to cause the car to wander a bit. So there's nothing wrong with the car, it's just one of the characteristics of the tires. The second type of tire that we get, which is one that we find on most of our vehicles in any case, is our all-weather tire. And as the name suggests, that tire is able to handle both wet weather conditions as well as dry driving conditions, and it has characteristics that we take from both conditions. Then we get a pure wet weather tire and a snow tire. Now in some countries, by the way, where there is snow, you're actually legally required to remove your summer tires or your all-weather tires and put on your wet weather or snow tires. And in fact, you can get a fine if you have the wrong set of tires on. Now, interestingly enough, the way that a snow tire gets its grip is the same way that we get grip, I suppose, when we're taking press stick off something. So if we've got a piece of press stick on a piece of paper, we use another piece of press stick to pull that original piece off. And it's exactly the same with snow tires. With snow tires, we need the tread to fill up with snow so that it's the snow on snow contact that actually creates the grip. So quite a cool concept that. Then we get an all-terrain tire. So that's a tire that's going to serve a number of purposes, and we find these typically on our buckies and commercial vehicles that are off-road, and they can handle a little bit of mud and mostly dust though. And then of course we get full mud tires, and the way that a mud tire gets grip is it's more of a paddling effect on the tread that pulls that tire through the mud. So those are some of the types of tires we get. Now, of course, the car manufacturers work very, very closely with the tire manufacturers to produce very specific characteristics out of the tires that we want on our vehicles. And the 2 main characteristics that we want is, first of all, noise reduction. So again, if we look at European emissions taxes, one of the emissions that you're taxed on is noise emission from your tires. So there's a lot of work that goes into reducing the amount of noise that your tire produces. And in fact, on your more expensive tires, you can actually start to see specific patterns on the tread that are actually sound baffles that assist in reducing the noise that the tire generates when it's rolling. The second thing that we want to reduce is the amount of static discharge that the tire produces so that when we get in and out of the vehicle, we don't shock ourselves to death. So in the good old days, we used to see a lot of cars driving around and they had chains that hung off underneath the vehicle, and as that chain made contact with the road, it discharged all the static buildup. Now we don't see that anymore because the tires do a great job in actually reducing the static charge. Now, one of the things that we get asked a lot of questions about is, what do the numbers on the tires stand for? So we've got a tire over here that we're going to use as an example. And in this case, we can see here that the markings here say 185, 65, R15, and then there's 2 more items over here. There's an 88 and an H. So let's go through these numbers independently. All right, so let's start off with this 185. This tells us what the width of the tire is in millimeters. Then we have 65. Now this is the profile of the tire or the height of the tire. Now it's not as you think. It's not actually a measurement in millimeters. The 65 tells us that the height of the profile of the tire is 65% of the width of the tire. Now you may wonder why we do it like that. And the simple reason is so that we can accommodate a change in the actual diameter of the rim that we have on our wheel. So if you want to go from a 16-inch to an 18-inch rim, there are tables that the tire fitment centers have that they can plug in your tire's details and come up with a tire that might be able to accommodate a different diameter on the rim, but it still retains the same height of the tire. And it's critical that our tire height remains consistent because this determines the accuracy of our speedometer as well as the effectiveness of sensors such as our ABS sensor and our ESP sensor, that they work correctly. Then we have this R over here, which tells us that this is a radial tire. And what that means is that there's actually cabling, high strength cabling in the tire itself that provides strength and rigidity for the tire. And then we have this 15 over here. Now this 15 is the diameter of the rim in inches. So quite interesting for me that we have in the same line millimeters, a percentage, and inches. And then of course we've got two more ratings on the tire. The first is this 88, for example, over here, which is our load index. Now 88, just out of interest, means this tire can handle about 560 kilograms, so one mother-in-law per tire load that we can carry. And the H is our speed rating, and in this case, H means that this tire can handle around 220 kilometers an hour from a speed rating point of view. But there's a word of caution behind that, because your speed rating of your tire is what your tire can handle for 15 minutes of continuous use before it starts to fatigue the tire. It's a dangerous misconception that people believe that if their tires are smooth, that they're now suddenly going to have a slick tire and that's going to give them more grip. A slick tire is made out of a completely different compound, which is actually quite sticky, and that's what causes it to grip. Whereas a normal road-going tire, we need those blocks and we need that tread to create a biting edge. And that's what gives us our grip. Now, I can simulate a biting edge with my fingers. If I run my fingers this way, and you can do the same, there's no grip. But if I push them this way, they suddenly grip. And it's this movement on the base of my fingers that creates that biting edge. And it's exactly the same as with your tires. Okay, so a couple of safety factors just to consider when purchasing a tire. Bear in mind that this is one of your key safety elements on a vehicle, so we really shouldn't be taking chances in terms of buying unknown brands. Also make sure that when you purchase a tire, that the tire is still a new tire in terms of its production. Make sure that the tire has a healthy speed rating as well as a load index, and of course make sure that your tires are operated at the manufacturer's recommended pressures. So we hope that that information was useful to you, and we look forward to seeing you on future episodes of How Things Work.